Hi there, I'm your host Clive Sirkin, and welcome to the Unstuck podcast, where we're on a journey to help you get control of your work environment, get yourself unstuck, and perform to your full potential. All right, so today's guest, our first of the year, 2023, is Mike Linton. Mike is I'm going to say a 5-time CMO. You can add in the blanks and maybe it's a 7-time, but 5 seems like a good number. The bottom line is Mike has a wealth of experience, which I plan to tap into in this conversation. Amongst other roles, Mike was the CMO of Best Buy, eBay, Farmers Insurance, and Ancestry. He's widely published, at least back in the days. Recently hosted a podcast, and I'm hoping that's a series, and currently serves on number board. So, Mike, welcome. Thank you for making time, my friend. It was a long time in the making, but you're here now, and I'm excited, my friend. So,
well, it's great to be here, and thanks for the introduction. Much appreciated. Yeah, I've headed marketing 5 times. Yeah, someday I'm going to get it right. So,
yeah,
there we go.
But, it's like I use a different term, which I'll keep off of this one. But I think to put things in perspective, today's episode should be something more about like 2 grumpy old men whinging about the state of the world. And I say that as a compliment to both of us. But in all seriousness, what I do want to do and what I do want to get into you is sort of a reflection of your past successes and, frankly, even more so the failures, because that's where the real learning is, and sort of draw lessons out of that. And I'm struck by sort of this overarching notion that as I look both back and as I reflect on the conversations I'm doing, companies tend to address and try and address the same issues, the same challenges every 3 or 5 years. And on the one hand, there's dramatic innovation and change going on. On the other hand, it's taking place in the same, like transformation, digital transformation, restructure. I mean, companies, why do you think that's the case? If you reflect back on your years, why are companies keep attacking the same problem over and over and over again?
So I'll take this on from a marketing and a company perspective at the same time, if that makes sense. And I think, and the CMO job does turn over faster than any of the other C-suite by a significant amount. But I have been a CMO of 5 companies, and 2 of those I did make it almost 8 years in 2 of them. And I think, though, one of the things is I started looking at the job and the company and the situation a lot more closely, because a lot of times I think there's a belief in the company that the product is good or the value equation is good and the positioning is good, and all they need is better marketing. And what you see in those companies is a continuation of the real problem is the value proposition or the competitive set. It's not the marketing. It's not actually anything. It's the entire consumer experience. But rather than address that, it's way easier to just say, God, just go convince those consumers that our stuff is really good. And then I think actually a lot of marketers play into that by immediately coming in and firing the agency or something, which I have never done, because I think that is a terrible signal to the company. And it basically says, yes, I'm going to solve this problem with new creative, even though that's going to be a year out or a half a year out, and count on me to do that. And I think that is it just really feeds the idea that, yes, we're going to put a magic person in this job and they're going to make all the consumers want to buy us. Right. And I think that's a real issue.
But it's almost like sort of reshuffling the deck chairs when you have some much more fundamental problems. It's like people. My sense is, many times you're admiring the problem, or frankly, even more acutely admiring the symptom and wallowing in the symptoms versus getting at root cause of what's going on.
And my thing is, you got to go to the consumer in the marketplace and figure out, if you're not winning the game, you really got to understand why the consumer is not. And this goes to B2B too, because there's B2B consumers. Why the people you are targeting are not buying you? And a lot of times that is because you've lost the edge that made you, or the company has a belief this belief, and you watch companies do this. They have these tremendous beliefs that, here's one in insurance. The consumer can see the difference between independent agents and captured agents and people that answer the phone. And they actually understand the difference in the companies. They do not. They think that anybody that talks to them is an agent. But if you watch how the industry developed, it believed that the distribution channel was widely understood by consumers, and that's just not true. And you see that in a lot of industries. There's these beliefs that existed for a reason because they were true, but they are no longer true.
So it sort of penetrates the psyche of a company, and they don't move on.
Yes, another example is when they think, gosh, you got this total addressable market, and there's just a matter of lighting it up.
Right.
And a lot of times you can light up that market 100 times. It just doesn't want to buy what you have. And you can keep changing out the thing you're giving customers in the hopes that message will make them want to buy you. Or you can start thinking, maybe we have to evolve what we're selling them. Right. And I think a lot of companies get trapped in that belief thing then, and that's really, in my mind, really dangerous. It's really dangerous to take a job where your job is to deliver a belief that 2 or 3 other people haven't been able to deliver on.
Right. Well, when I was pretending to be a marketeer, we used to have this discipline that we would go through, which is answer the question, what is the problem that's preventing us from making money?
Yeah.
Because, and I think you and I talked about this the last time we had a conversation, which is, I grew up in the world as like in the advertising world, which is like build the brand through communication. This will result in equity. If you have equity, one day you can make money. That kind of a train of thought, which obviously is, horrendously wrong. When I became, as I evolved over time, it's kind of like, we're in the business of making money. Okay. And if that's the case, then start with the question, which is, what is it that's really preventing us from making money?
I agree with this. And I think I look at, the jobs I've had, and it's sales overnight, brands over time. And then, having done 8 years in retail too, if you don't make the sales overnight, you're not going to build the brand because you're going to run out of money really fast. And so my thing has always been, you have to do both, and you have to strike the right balance. And sometimes the balance is way towards the sales side because the company needs that. And you have to be flexible enough to do both of those. And that also, to me, requires a ton of analytics.
100%. It's like, it's like, we had this chat. It's like, equity is about taking money from someone in a way that they feel really good about giving you that money.
Yeah.
And the experience of the product they are buying is so much greater than the value of the money. From a perception and reality standpoint, your net outcome is you're building equity. And it was like, funny, 2 hours ago, I had a conversation with an old colleague of mine, and we were talking about some sort of initiative she's working on. And it was like, we want to be a marketing-led organization. I was like, actually, the minute you say you want to be a marketing-led organization, you're selling a signal to the sales force that they're secondary. And you set up these sort of conflict constructs, which is not what you're trying to accomplish, right?
I don't do it. I never even call it marketing money. I call it consumer money. And then the thing I want to do with the consumer money is try and do the most good for the customer and the company simultaneously with that money. And sometimes that means, I'm going to move stuff into short-term tools because the company needs it. I'm not going to cut the long-term tools out, but I'm going to strike a balance that meets what the company needs while I protect the marketplace. And that's that sales overnight, brand over time thing.
I love that. Sales overnight, brand over time. So it's kind of, you're talking about this, and I'm in the back of my head, I'm going like, this is so fundamental. The discipline of marketing is so basic and intuitive, and yet we tend to drive past obvious things, or we tend to overcomplicate it. And I think you wrote a column, if I remember correctly, where it might have been in one of your columns, where you talked about CMOs or marketing being like a Major League Baseball manager. And I love it. Was you, right?
It was me. Okay. And it was called Why the Short Shelf Life of CMOs.
Talk to me about that, because I remember it resonated.
It's pretty long ago I wrote it. I want to say it's 2009 or 10, and it was, and the whole thing I just wrote in Forbes.com. My whole pay was a subscription to Forbes. So, but I got to write what I wanted, and I wrote the major league. Why market? The CMO job is like being a manager of a pro team, because there's a couple things that go on. One, your most passionate fans are in your own company, and they all have an opinion on how you should manage that game. Two, they can see everyone else's game. Like they can see all the other pro teams. And so they can see the best in class that they can actually create by just looking at all this stuff. And then they all want to vote, and they all think they can do the marketing job, or a lot of them do. And so my thing about being, if you're going to be the manager, there's a couple of things I would say. One, I learned early in my career, if I come in, I got to manage the team my way. I can't let all these people vote. I can listen to them. I can take their input, but they don't get to vote. Because I will say democracy is very bad for brands, very bad for brands. And and so I don't want a lot of voters in the room. I want the people that know what they're doing. Two, I always think when you're a major league manager, inevitably you're going to want to do something different, or the team's going to want to do something different. So you might as well play your game. And
ultimately,
play a game where everyone is telling you what to do. And so that means you have to get out in front of the company and play your game. And the other thing I would say about the major league manager thing, everyone thinks they can do it. But the difference in marketing versus other functions is, well, one, nobody's sitting there thinking, you know what I want to do? I want to take over the IT job. Because I would love to be, putting stuff in the cloud and working on the help desk and all that other stuff. No one, they just want to complain about that. And no one wants to be the CFO and go to audit committee. But everyone looks at a lot of the marketing stuff, especially the finished product, and thinks that's just not that hard. I could make a commercial, or I could buy search words, or I could run this. And that what no one sees is you start with a pile of 1 million ideas, and then you're going to deliver like 20. That sorting process, no one sees it. They just see the end. And that's kind of, no one sees major league practice. They don't see the drafting room. They don't see they don't see any of that. They just see the game. And so I wrote that because, it was my thing about, gosh, yeah, it's not, if you take this job, take it and manage your way. And then also accept that, unless you're like Bill Belichick or Tommy Lasorda or somebody, you're going to get moved.
Yeah, you got a shelf life.
Yeah.
And by the way, the analogy carries true, because it's like managers move from team to teams, and great CMOs tend to move from brands to brand and have continuous success. And it's, speaking of which, and I do want to talk about when you were the manager, one of your teams was Best Buy. And during that time, and you can frame the era, but I remember, I didn't know you back then, but I was a scholar of any brand that was doing really interesting stuff. And I just remember tracking what you were doing at the time, not knowing it was you, but the Best Buy organization, you guys were constantly putting out really provocative, interesting, dynamic, new to the world thinking and ideas, and executing them really well. And the results talk to themselves. I mean, you guys were on fire at the time. I'd love you to talk about that era in terms of what you were doing and why you were able to do it. And it's not one thing. I'd love to get under the covers there and get a sense of what was those magical things that came together that allowed you guys and you and your team to put out the kind of stuff you were putting out at the time.
So one, I almost didn't take that job because there were no Best Buys where I lived, and I was afraid of retail. That would have been an incredibly idiotic move. But
right. And just for perspective, you grew up at Procter, right? So
I grew up at Procter, and I was a consumer goods guy, and I didn't have, I thought a really good career for a while, and then I made a bad career choice, and I wasn't sure what I should do. And then I thought, gosh, I got this call from Best Buy. There's no Best Buys where I live. So I drove to Crazy Eddie's and Circuit City, and nobody beats the Whiz. And I thought, oh my God, I won't last more than a year. And I ended up taking this job, and I'm always grateful to the the guy that hired me, Wade Fenn, and the people there, because it was Camelot for me. Like the first 6 years were Camelot, and I think a couple things went into that. Um, One, it was a great place to get talent. I mean, there was Pillsbury Mills, there's agencies, there's big agencies, there's financial services, there's giant retailers. So the talent pool is fantastic, and we were able to draw talent from. I had this vision. We're gonna get retail talent, consumer goods talent, and service talent, and we're gonna blend them up, and then we're gonna turn them loose. And I think nine of the people on my team there, counting some of the lower levels, have gone on to be CMOs. So the talent was great. The timing was perfect because Best Buy was on the rise, and it had, we were talking about value propositions, a great value proposition. It was objective. It just cared to get the technology to you without commission. That allowed you to just market it as we want you to have what you want and need. And then the culture was super good. Both my peers and my boss let you take risks, a lot of risks. And so we started the whole Reward Zone loyalty program, which was fantastic. We had this idea we could trade marketing content for music, and then have unique content. And so we did deals with, it's a far cry from where I started in toilet paper and bleach and bar soap to do a deal with the Rolling Stones, Elton John, but we did. And that was marketing trading. I had a trading desk, and we'd trade stuff. And then with a couple other people, one of the merchants bought Geek Squad when it was, I don't know, like 11 people, and we expanded into 2 years. Went to the company and said, give us a lot of money because there's only going to be one brand that wins this game, and it should be Geek Squad. And so we blew it up. But that was I think if I'd been 2 years earlier, it wouldn't have worked. And maybe a couple years later, it probably wouldn't have worked. And a lot of those things got driven off of, right time, right place, super fortunate to be there. And, I look back and I knock wood that I got a chance to do that. And then the team was so good. So good.
But you said something, and you use these words. My peers and my boss let us take risks. What do you mean by let us take risks? What is that? How does that play out?
There was a couple things. One, they let. I was telling you about kind of the major league manager thing, and to me, my thing was we're going to build the brand and we're going to build the marketing as a pillar to go with what I thought was already great merchandising, inventory, and retail ops. And that's going to be a pillar, but we're not going to let people vote on it. We're going to build it in a way it connects with you. We'll take all your input and we'll connect. And they let that happen. Two, they let me take risks like Reward Zone, which that's a 3-year effort, right? The IT person, Mark Gordon, helped me put 14. Well, he really did it. I just asked him 14 databases into one, so you could start all the CRM, all the direct-to-consumer stuff, all the segmentation, and then you could build Reward Zone on top of that. But that's a 3-year job. And so the company would stick with you in that investment thing, and not every week go, are you sure it's going to work? And then when you did things like we did the Rolling Stones deal and a couple other things that had never been done, and the company would roll with you on it.
But what's behind that? Is it trust? Is it confidence? It is we'd rather play to win than fear losing. Like,
I think there was 3 things. I have this thing: companies are afraid of failing or being late, and Best Buy was afraid of being late because you could watch the technology come in. So it's almost always on the edge of, if you have a chance to do it, you probably should, because unlike consumer goods where you can say we're going to test this for a year and see how it works. You can't say, what's coming out? Mobile phones. We'll just watch them for a year. We'll just see how they do. You take them or you don't. And if you're late, you lose all the practice and everything. And Best Buy at the time really wanted to be in the front of a lot. 2, the team had built up, I think, some good credibility because a lot of the things we did early worked. And so the company was willing to give us a lot of rope. 3, if we did something bad, and we had a good run for like a couple of years where almost everything pretty much worked. But if we did something wrong, we would shoot it first. We wouldn't try and defend it. We would take it out because I think as a marketer, your credibility has got to be, if your stuff sucks, you shoot it.
Own it.
And then 4, the company was trying a lot of things in a lot of places, and so it felt natural to give it a try. And I can contrast that with other places where, they want innovation with certainty, which is just not a doable thing. And if I could do it certainly, I wouldn't be an innovation.
Right.
So
It's interesting because it's always invariably, and I love that metaphor. It's like fear being late or fear getting it wrong. It's like a lot of companies that I'm around that struggle is that they fear losing more than they love winning.
Oh, I totally agree.
Right.
Because winning is not a sure thing, but not losing is a sure thing.
Right.
And I think, my thing, and one of my creatives pounded this into my head a long time ago, is like all these people are reading books on innovation, and then they do the dullest creative possible because they're afraid of taking any risk.
100%.
And then that translates to innovation as well.
Well, and also, and I don't want to bash bases, but it's a ton of the methodology, and this is for a whole other discussion. Is the whole methodology behind innovation is designed to sort of drive to lowest common denominator, de-risk, and then bring out something that's
that's again, I love democracy as a concept, and it's really good in a lot of ways. It's horrible for innovation,
right?
Because everyone will vote like one conservative step down eventually and sand off all the edges. It's like if Ben Franklin came in and said, I'm going to fly a kite and with a key and see if there's lightning. Everyone will go, you know how much kites cost? And it's like $5. Just give me the kite. And then people are going to go, what are you going to do if there is electricity? And then you say, I'm just trying to fly the kite. And everyone will go, well, then they'll make you have some half-assed forecast on what you're going to do with light bulbs before you've even flown the kite. And that is where innovation gets crushed.
Well, there's no doubt. So it seems like a natural segue. I'm laughing. I'm looking at my clock here, and it's nearly time for a cocktail. So you also, which made me think about, you also wrote a piece once way back then about marketing is like making a martini. There was you, right?
It was me.
I'm always scared that we're like, it might have been someone else.
No, that was me. And I love that one because, I think when you look at what makes consumers do things, they don't do things because of the company math. They do things because of their feelings and value assessment. And the whole story was, I think it was a cosmopolitan because they needed a martini with a lot of ingredients, but it was the zero-based budgeting of what people would do and how they would destroy basically a really excellent drink and the ambiance of the bar because they were trying to optimize the martini yield. And if you really think about a martini, the only thing that really you need in a martini that works is the vodka or the gin. And so the whole story goes zero-based budgeting, and it gets the martini to just, you lose the martini glass because they're expensive and they break and they're labor intensive to wash. Geez, you got to do this, and then you got to mix all this stuff up. And God, we should just give people extra vodka in a shot glass because that is really the most powerful part of the martini, which is true. It's totally true. But it's not why the consumer buys the martini. And so, and I'd used this argument in a couple companies, and almost always won with it. And when you use this argument, you lose. It's probably time that your major league manager time is over. But yes. That was a Martini article, and it got a lot of, at the time, a bunch of people thought it was clever. So,
but it does force into perspective some of the absurdities.
It does. Happen. I mean, the other thing that I hate about some zero-based budgeting and some of the ways people approach marketing is they assume that if you can't measure it, it's not working. But that is not true. That's like if I run like 3 miles or I swim a lot or I do a bunch of push-ups, yes, it's probably better for me, but can I actually project what it has done for my longevity that day? I can't. But you get kind of that mental model where then people are like, well, then we shouldn't do it. And I think that is that is where the judgment and the consumer story gets taken out of marketing. And to me, marketing is really the consumer engaging with the brand and giving it money because it likes the brand. It's not the ROI of each piece. It's the ROI of all of the pieces working to make the company money.
Right, and you can optimize and iterate and infer, what is and what isn't working. But it's like if it becomes too mathematical, you suck the life out of it.
Well, look, and if you can't, if you have to have some judgment. Particularly, I always think marketing is on the edge of tech, where the brand, the consumer, and technology meet. So you're almost always on the front end of whatever the new technology is, and it's super hard to measure that sometimes. And also, it's really hard to measure some things like PR, brand you can measure, but not always perfectly. And then you got to put that into a cocktail, if you will, and do your best and adjust the cocktail constantly based on the needs of the company and the marketplace. But the idea that you can run it like you could run a plant that makes widgets, it's just not true, because consumers are not like a plant, and they don't consume logically. They're segments, and they consume emotionally and logically at the same time.
Right, and again, I mean, ultimately, when all is said and done, and this is not setting up a measurement versus instinct, because that's a binary construct that doesn't have to exist, but ultimately, great brand building, great commercial outcomes, there's a part of that that recipe is instinct and a willingness to trust your instinct and act on instinct. And
I totally agree with this. And my thing is also, if you can measure it, you should. And you should also hold the team accountable to drive the financials of the company, because
right,
we're not going to be doing our instinct and losing money. However, in turn, the company ought to give you leeway to do if I'm doing the sales overnight, give me leeway to do the brand over time, because next year when you want those sales, that's the brand over time. And
100%.
that is the judgment piece. And I am in no way discounting the math, because I think you should math everything you can, and you should translate it into financials as much as you can. I am, though, saying there's elements of this that is judgment, just like as a major league manager, when you make a call, and companies should have let the CMO make that call and not vote on whether or not we're going to steal second base or something. It's like let the team play its game, and then if it's not doing sales overnight, you're going to have to change the team. And if it's not doing brand over time, sales overnight are going to disappear next year or 2 years out. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
Right. But I couldn't agree more. And that's why I want to make sure we're not sending them as binary concepts. But instinct is such an important part of the equation. And I once worked with, I have to say, probably unquestionably one of the smartest people I've met and in the business. I mean, super smart person. Terrific experience. Finance and strategy person, who couldn't move forward unless the math added up.
Right.
And as a result, deeply discounted his instinct. And he had great instinct. This is the tragedy. He had terrific instinct, but he just wouldn't trust his instinct because he couldn't put math behind that instinct. And I was kept going like, you have to trust your instinct. We'll work the math out. We're not going to do stupid shit.
Well,
but you actually have terrific
if
instinct.
If it's true innovation, you have what I'll call hand grenade math, which is you have some math that says this might work. But if you knew it would work, it wouldn't be an innovation. And like when we were doing the Rolling Stones deal, that was the first time any retailer ever took we pressed, which is we manufactured the DVD. They owned it, and we took exclusive rights in North America, and we believed it was going to go platinum in the first couple of days, but we had no idea. And same with rewards, and we tested that for a year, and then when we rolled it out, we were so short, we ran out of cards. And so it's which is a good problem, kind of, except you would think I would buy more cards because there's carrying cost on cards is zero. but then you have all that stuff where you don't know. Like Geek Squad, when we rolled that out, we kind of knew, and
But
so, but if you're waiting for the math on something that has never been done, the math won't show up until you do something.
right,
And what you get in companies will then demand you do some half-assed math that people are totally making up, and then they'll put it in the forecast. Then when it rolls out, if you're ahead of that plan, you're good. But if you're behind that plan, everyone's like, "Why aren't you making a plan?" And no one goes to the fact that was all made up in the first place. And so my thing is, what's the cheapest, fastest experiment we can do to see if this works? And if we can't do an experiment and we have to go big or not, is it worth the risk of totally failing? And if it is,
go
let's
for it.
do it. And if we fail, we'll just have to throw the flag and pull it from the field.
You just made me, I think you answered the question earlier on, but you just made me think of something. Why was it Geek Squad? I mean, I get it's fabulous name, but why wasn't it Best Buy's Geek Squad? Like, there's no
Oh,
Best Buy in Geek Squad.
well, one, when we bought it, there was an argument of we should
Right.
make it into Best Buy. But I was on the other side of that, and I'm a pretty loyal brander. I went everything in there. At the time, Best Buy didn't take all the PCs and computers in the, there was no Dell. That Dell was separate, everything. But you want a Geek Squad to be able to serve any PC or any computer stuff, anything that had anything to do with a networked home. Two, you know, consumer expectations were not the same for technology as they were for even televisions, surely appliances and everything else. And if you wanted someone working on your computer, you really wanted someone that was geeky. When you were buying, like, we sold appliances or other stuff, you didn't really want a geek person. And and so we thought the brand had way more power to be by itself, housed in Best Buy. And then at the time, our thinking was also uh, Geek Squad could have standalone stores,
Right.
and
Can you,
that
ma- can you
couldn't
can you
do it.
imagine if because I could just picture discussion where like we got a brand that's Best Buy. We bought it could have been a whole different story.
I was in that discussion, yes, and this is what I'm talking about: the culture, the company. There was two sides of that, and the marketing team carried the day because of the culture. And I'm not sure that happens at that many companies. And because I actually remember arguing with the founder about that, and him finally saying, "So you think it's got to stay Geek Squad?" And me saying, "Yes." He's like, "Okay." And
There you
and
go.
I think that just doesn't happen very many places.
Well, thank goodness it did. As not surprisingly, we've like talked a ton, and we're getting close to time. I want to end the conversation, or at least this one, because we'll have some more. Um, One of the, and you alluded to this earlier on when you were talking about the earlier conversation on your journey at Best Buy and talent, but one of the joys of getting long in the tooth like I am and you are
That's so
is,
hurtful, Clive.
seasoned with patina. Um, but like genuinely one of the greatest, and I never envisioned or imagined this, is watching the people that you've worked with go on to enjoy great success, and however they define it. But like I sit and I watch it, and I see on LinkedIn, and I see people that I worked with, and go, oh, "Damn, they were on the team," and you feel genuinely good about it. And I
Oh,
know that's a big part of what wires you. And you've referred to this a couple of times in conversations about people who on the team have gone on to be CMOs and chief growth officers, and that is, was that intentional or is that consequential? How did you think about talent, and how would you, like, I have a strong point of view on, I think when people ask me what do you really do, I go, when all is said and I'm a builder of talent. Like that's my, has always been my job. I'm an ideas person, and my real job is building talent. I'm curious about your philosophy, looking backwards and thinking about when you were in the game.
well, here's what I
Early,
try.
early days.
Here's what I try and do. I try and build businesses, brands, and people. And I think on the people building front, the best thing you can do for your people is give them real experiences that the marketplace will pay for, and then push them into not just being good marketers, but good business people So I'll try and make sure that all my people can speak financial. And in every job I've been in where I've been CMO, I've created a marketing CFO, because I want the marketers to be connected to the universal language of business, which is financials. And then I also pay the team a lot on what the team does collectively versus what functions do individually, because I want them thinking like a CMO all the time, not like, gosh, I crushed acquisition, or I crushed the brand stuff, or I crushed media buying, or look at my CRM, I'm really killing it. It's like, no, I think you need to know how to win the game, and then how you play in that game to maximize the win. And then also, if you're in a good spot, like I was at Best Buy, and a number of my farmers people went on to be CMOs as well, and some from eBay as well. I think if you have a good brand and a good situation where the company is either in a really good spot, or even better, it's in a really good spot and it wants to be on the edge and it's letting you do stuff, you get experiences and practice that not many people get. And that makes you into a way better candidate to be CMO.
And then you get the joy of seeing it happen.
Yeah, and then I mean, the other thing is you want to keep raising the bar on the team in a way they like it. And if you're winning a lot of games, it's a lot easier to raise that bar. And then if you're lucky to get the talent that, like I'm still, the Best Buy talent was awesome. I think, like I was telling you, I think 9 of that team went on to be CMOs. But that was right place, right time in a city that's just bursting with talent, where it would just come. And so that was super fun.
Amen to that. Listen, we're at time. I'm super appreciative of you making the time. And I do want to sort of give a shout out to our buddy Jeff Culleton at AdCom, who connected the two of us. And I'm delighted I met him, and therefore he connected us. So
thank you, Jeff.
I hope Jeff is listening. Mike Linton, as always, a joy talking to you, sir, and hopefully we'll get you back again, because I think we got a couple more martinis and baseball games to talk about, my friend.
I'd love to do that.
Sir.
Thank you for having me.
Amen.
This podcast was brought to you by Screen Dragon. We break down barriers, make work flow, and unlock talent. Visit screendragon.com to see our software in action.